Hey guys, welcome to Man Card Mondays, episode number 10. How do I nail it as a grandfather? Let's take a look. Ted Lodden, welcome to Man Card Monday.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yes. Ted, I am so glad to have you here today because we're going to talk about, I don't know, maybe it's just the fact on Thanksgiving, had time with kids. We got together. We were one of the few families perhaps that found some ways to meet together in person for Thanksgiving celebration, and everybody's had to navigate a bunch of different things, when it comes to family this year and all kinds of things like that. And so I just thought with the holidays approaching here, the next holiday approaching, like we have got to talk about today's topic, which is how to nail it, right? The kids would say how to kill it as a grandparent. So I know you are the world's best grandparent. I see you have a picture of your grandkids behind you there. So will you tell us?
It's a shameless plug.
Will you just start? No, you and I have connected and had some great stories. We've swapped. You told me about your grandkids and your kids and what parenting is like, and I've shared with you some of my, things that have perplexed me, and I'm trying to figure out. And I've valued, your advice and just your encouragement. So I thought, man, there's other guys that got to get in on some of this as well. And so would love to just talk to you a little bit about what that looks like, grandparenting and parenting, and just what those things, what's worked and what's been helpful for you and what you're seeing these days and all that. But first, let's get to the important stuff. So will you tell us who those people were in that picture and who they're related to, and just tell us a little about your family and what life looks like for you as a grandparent these days.
So those are my two grandsons, 6 years old, Benson, and Theo, 2 years old.
Okay.
So they are an absolute gift from God. A friend of mine told me, he said, if you love your children, wait till you have grandchildren. And I said, Donnie, it couldn't get any better. I love my kids. Yeah. And he said, oh, wait. He goes, you don't understand. You'll understand when you get grandkids. And he's right. A grandkid, I think, grandchildren fill a space in your heart that you never knew was empty until you're there. And you experience the relationship, which is completely different than what you had with your kids. And you discover your role, which is completely different than what you had with your kids, or at least it needs to be different.
Yeah. Well, so my first question for you, kind of just barking down this tree, was, I think on the one hand, I just wanted to ask you, what are some of the joys, right? And notice you automatically kind of went right into it looks like a sweet gig from the outside looking in, because like you get all the fun with like way less of the responsibility, right? Like you can party with them as long as you want, give them all the sugar, and you put them in the car and send them home.
Well, that's the theory anyway, right? Yeah. That's what everybody says. And a certain part of that is true, but I think responsibility kind of changes a little bit. When you're a parent, you are so responsible for day to day and managing things and directing them and correcting them. And when you switch over to the grandparent role, you need to sit more in the background and let the parents take the pace, which, thank goodness, that's our role, because the pace today is far more challenging than when I raised my two boys. I mean, it's a much faster pace today. But even with my boys, I discovered that you need to let them take their pace.
Mm.
And you need to follow their pace rather than trying to dominate or push the pace, because they'll only go as fast as they can go.
Sure.
And that's then the grandparents' role is to sit there behind the parents and to support and to love and to give direction, maybe slower and in more subtle ways.
Mm-hmm.
Than if you're on the front line, so to speak, as the parent is.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest challenge. You know, you tend to think, well, you know, I know how this is supposed to go, so I'll just take care of it. That's not your role anymore. That's my son's role. When my oldest grandchild was 2 years old, we were down at the beach. We all went out to dinner. We're sitting in the thing about going out to dinner with little ones in Florida is that when they find out you've got a toddler, your reservation all of a sudden disappears. And so it disappeared on us one evening, and we ended up going to this place that has great food, but the ambiance is just not there. And my grandson is sitting at the head of the table, and he insisted on feeding himself, and he had a soft-sided water glass that you get at some of those bar-type places.
Yeah.
And he thought it was great that he could drink out of it. And all of a sudden, he let some water drip down his chin. And my youngest son laughed at him, not my oldest son, that's his little boy. And then he takes a bigger drink, let more of it drip down his chin, and then Grandpa laughed at him.
Mm-hmm.
Took the whole glass and went like this and dumped it over his head and threw it over his shoulder.
Oh, wow.
And I was in stitches. I was about ready to fall out of the booth. And my oldest son looked at me and very calmly said, "What are you doing? You are encouraging him."
Mm.
And I said, "Let's get things straight here. Okay. I had that responsibility with you and your younger brother. I've already done it. My responsibility now is to love him." And that was personally, to me, very funny. So this is your situation to deal with and to teach. I just enjoyed it.
There you go. There you go. Well,
But I think that's, that's our opportunity. That's our experience.
Yeah.
It gets painful at times. My oldest grandson is struggling with some things right now.
Mm.
And so we've had some grandpa talks about, is that appropriate behavior or not? And how could you better handle that? And he's very receptive to it because we have this different relationship.
Right.
Not getting scolded. He's not getting corrected. He's getting coached.
Right.
Right.
Well, so what strikes me as you're kind of describing that is that there's an opportunity in the midst of all of this to have a unique sense of authority and a voice in a child's life, which long term, one of the things that's come up as a theme on this show, as we've talked about some of our different topics on here, whether it's, faith and work, or what does retirement look like, or how do I find what I want, right? One of the core needs that we have as a man is significance. And I think that comes through impact, influence, creating legacy, all of these things. And so, some people look, my dad has even made the joke like, "Oh, I really love it when I see your taillights," like that everybody, he loves it when we're here, but he doesn't mind seeing the taillights. I think that's fair. That's But I also I look at my dad and I see there's some unique ways he has some tools, opportunities. I think that his voice will shape my kids in ways that, as much as I wanted to, I'll never have that. And I think that is so awesome when I see men lean into that. There's a whole spectrum and a whole bunch of different people, perspectives, ways that they approach the grandparenting thing, and for a lot of good reasons it's different, right? But I think what we all, as people trying to raise kids, what grandparents share in common is probably that opportunity to mold and to shape. Now, here's the thing, Ted, you can't always be the fun guy, right? Because sometimes
no. My granddaughter, my daughter-in-law one time said, "Would you give Benson anything he asked for?" And I said, "No."
Yeah.
It may look like that, but no. The answer is no.
I love that the question came up because
if it's going to be harmful to him, if it's something he shouldn't be doing, if it's dangerous, if I think it establishes a bad habit, then the answer is no. I'm not going to allow him to do that. But short of that,
yeah,
absolutely, I'm going to spoil him and send him home to you. In Deuteronomy somewhere, I don't remember exactly where, it says, "Be careful and watch yourself." So when I'm out and about with my grandson, not that I'm not watching myself all the time, but I think I'm a little more knowledgeable or mindful of myself so that he sees grandpa doing the right things, thinking the right things, saying the right things, because Deuteronomy says, "Teach your children and their children after them."
Deuteronomy 6.
That's my responsibility. Somewhere in Deuteronomy, it talks about 10,000 generations. I like to think of it that way.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to start with me. I'm going to teach my children. I'm going to teach my grandchildren. And hopefully this continues for 10,000 generations. I don't know, but that's a nice thought to have.
Yeah.
And, no, I don't give him everything he wants, but will I give him ice cream for breakfast? Probably.
There you go. That's awesome. So you and I, before we started, we hit record on this too. We were just kind of talking about current season and what work looks like and family life looks like. And, you run I believe an accounting firm, and you've got a number of employees, and some were able to come back in the office and some are not because they've got kids at home and they're trying to run school and trying to figure out how to balance all of those things. And all of that is just a precursor to say something we all probably already know, right? Like many people are overwhelmed right now.
Right.
I look in my own life and I'm trying to juggle running a ministry that I don't even know what success looks like right now half the time. Like just putting stuff on YouTube, is that enough? Ministering to men on an individual level, but what do we do with large groups? So I'm trying to figure all that out, right? My wife is she's a social worker and does therapy. And so she's trying to see clients, and mental health is in demand right now, right? I mean, everybody's working on that. And then I got these kids, and it turns out they can't go to school. And so they're doing all the Zoom stuff. And I mean, just the number of days I have thought to myself, like, oh, those, other cultures had it right when they had grandparents live in the home with them. Which some of us watching this might be thinking, well, I'm glad that's not this, right?
Yeah.
But if with a lot of people, and I know dads are as well, and I think moms might be more likely to vocalize their overwhelm, and I think seek connection and help with that. Ted, I'm curious, what would you say to dads watching this who are overwhelmed, or grandfathers, right? But
yeah,
to a younger generation who might be watching this, what would you say to encourage them?
Well, I think take a deep breath, put down your cell phone, put down your watch, cut off the TV, quit playing games, and play with the kids. I think it's an opportunity for us. And I tell that to the people that are working from home that I'm in contact with all the time. And that's most of them right now, because they've been given the option to work from home. And I'm all for it, because it's just impossible to balance with kids. I can't imagine going through this when I was starting up my companies. I just can't imagine what I would have done. And so, but we also have distractions that I didn't have. And we get involved in those distractions. And I've told this to my son when I've been around. I said, Grant, you need to make time for these boys. when you can. He's working from home. He's an aerospace engineer. He runs 24 different projects around the world. But there's a time when you've just got to cut off the clock. You've got to be present. You have to talk and communicate with them. You've got to put down your phone. You've got to quit answering email messages or turn off the TV and just spend some good old time with the boys, throwing them on the couch or roughhousing with them or playing hide and seek or chasing around the house or having them chase you around the house. My 6-year-old grandson makes up games when he comes to Grandpa's house or when I go there. And honestly, I can't follow his logic on these games, but it's fascinating to me that he has this great imagination that he can create games. And so I play them. Interestingly enough, I always lose because he makes up the rules.
Right.
I'm all for that, right? I get right into it and I compete with him and he wins, and I'm all for that. Now, we've had a few discussions about, you don't always win and you need to lose, and you need to lose for a purpose. And that is you get better by learning that, what you did wrong and correcting it and moving on. And so that's where I'm trying to pace. You don't pour that all down him at the same time, but you look for your opportunities and try to pace that in.
Wow.
As you go. And he's gradually catching on to it. I mean, we've played some board games and he's not happy when he loses, but
who is? Be worried if
he's
okay with it.
He's learning that you have to take risks in order to learn. You have to take risks in order to succeed. And it's just part of life. And so, but, going back to the question, there was a song by, I think it was George Strait that said that you missed the point in trying to win the race. And life is not the breaths you take, it's the moments that take your breath away. And if you remember back to the song, this person in the song was always too busy, couldn't get to his son's games, couldn't get to his son's activities. And then the son grew up.
Yeah.
Next thing you knew, the dad was kind of looking back saying, I wish I had done that. Okay. I can say honestly that I'm not one of those fathers because I made time, even if it meant I did without sleep.
Yeah. But
that would be the advice I would have for parents right now. It's such a busy pace right now.
Yeah.
It's so hard to keep up. I know that my son and my daughter-in-law, by the time they regroup, it's time for the boys to go to bed, but you've got to figure out how to fit time in with them.
Right.
And how to answer their questions and how to address their concerns and how to get those concerns. My oldest, when I would ask him how school was, he'd say, fine or good. Well, I knew that wasn't always the truth. So I had to keep asking questions. That I didn't feed him with a fire hose, but I would continually keep checking in with him till I could finally get out of him what was bugging him. And so take that back a step now. You're a grandparent. Okay. Your pace can't be like the parents. So you've got to ask more questions and be more patient and not take the lead pace because that's what mom and dad are supposed to do. My role is to be more supportive and to keep that pace kind of dialed down a little bit. And I'm a type A personality, so that's challenges in and of itself.
Right. So what I love about what you are articulating there, Ted, you whether you realize it or not, I think it seems like you're operating in this larger vision of grandparenting, right? So a lot of times I think people think, oh, like if I'm going to spend time with my grandkids, it's like, let's have some fun and let's keep them alive, right? Let's bring them back at least as good as we got them. right? The bar is on the ground essentially. But what you're talking about are things like character formation and personal development, right? Faith formation, like really like developing as a human being. And it sounds like you're looking for opportunities, right? So there's a calibration that goes on as you're experiencing things, and not that you think about that 24/7, I'm sure, but I think there's something about being open to what the Holy Spirit is presenting you with. And I think absolutely God has designed us to be influenced by multiple generations. And
Mm-hmm.
it is a beautiful thing when I watch parents and grandparents work together and do that. And I mean, I'm still trying to figure that out as well. I think we all are. Nobody bats 1,000, but that whole idea of investing, and I think the paradigm for it that seems to be most helpful for me, I just keep coming back to, what are the ways that God loves us, right? I mean, you talk about pacing, you talk about fire hoses and not using that. Like, God doesn't dump a fire hose on us. God doesn't shame
No.
us or scold us, belittle us. Like, he also doesn't do a lot of things for us that he could, right? Like, he allows us to learn some hard lessons, and sometimes we don't understand that. But that's part of the nature of love. And so
Yeah.
I kind of verbally process this now. I think like, yeah, I think part of our calling as parents, grandparents, is to love the people around us the way that God loves us, right? And
Yeah.
to dig into that. It just sounds like an awesome opportunity.
When I taught my own boys, we spent a lot of time in Proverbs, just for the wisdom of Proverbs. And fear of the Lord is the foundation of wisdom, or knowledge of the Lord results in good judgment, or there's just a lot of those types of things. They're just little short pieces, and so I've started kind of infusing those into my discussion with Benson. Now the 2-year-old, not so much yet. I sing him "Jesus Loves You" because quietly when I'm putting him to sleep, but when he talks, I can only understand about half of his sentences at this point. So,
right.
I mean, he's communicating, and he's just fascinating to me because everything's moving, and he just talks and talks and talks incessantly, and it means something, and I'm trying to understand it and gain his language. But with the older one, we're starting to make some progress. He doesn't know it, into the Proverbs. And so I was very proud of him this Thanksgiving. He last Thanksgiving, it was thank you for the food. Thank you for mommy. Thank you for daddy. And he went around the table. And I thought that I had been missed completely, but he finally came back to me and said, "Oh, and Grandpa." I was relieved. But this Thanksgiving, he said, I'm thankful for you, God. And I thought, wow, we're making some progress here because I want him to know that he needs to be most thankful for God and to keep God first. And so I think we're making good progress there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You just have to sit back and weigh it and listen and say, I think we're getting places here.
Yeah. And that reminds me, one of the things I've heard a great author, part of John Eldridge's whole Wild at Heart ministry, Morgan Snyder, talks about this idea of living in the moment, but measuring in the decade, right? So
Yes.
often in our evaluation of ourselves, or right, if we see ourselves as called to develop the people around us, whether that's love and bless our spouse, whether it's our kids, grandkids, whatever it is, it's so easy to want to flip that, right? And live in the long term and then just measure in the moment. How did I do in this moment? But you have to really be patient with evaluating. And all you have to do is go look at Jesus and his disciples, right? Like if the definition of success in Jesus' own ministry was disciples getting it right every time, well, then he would have for sure got a failing grade, right? But at the end of the day, when it was time for them to leave the nests, and they even needed a whole lot of help from the Holy Spirit, right? Let's be honest. You and I are sitting here talking about this Jesus movement today because it's alive and well, because they were able to carry it
Absolutely.
forward. And so I think somehow, like, trying to, God doesn't, I mean, God obviously cares about our behavior, but our behavior does not dictate our identity. We are his sons, no
Right.
matter how we act, right? And so to lead with love and grace and those kinds of things is really important in this. So all of that to say, we got a holiday coming up here again where people may have the luxury. I can't even believe I say getting together with your extended family for Christmas might be like normally that's not like an optional thing. It's like something we all would do, right? But if you have the ability to do it safely and the circumstances work out, you may have a chance to spend time with some people that you love, right?
Yes.
What would you encourage the grandfathers watching this? What would you encourage them to do in the next few weeks, right? We're just coming up a couple weeks out from Christmas here. What would you encourage them to do in this particular Christmas season? Number one, to bless their kids, right? But also their grandkids. What ideas come to mind of some things they could do, or what to keep their eyes open for, or whatever?
Yeah. So I spend a lot of time. My oldest son lives in Minneapolis, and so the grandkids live in Minneapolis, and my youngest son and his wife, he doesn't have any kids yet. They live in Cedar Rapids, so it's easier for them to get over here than it is my older son and his family. And so we've been discussing how are we going to do this, and I think the biggest thing right now is just to think in flexible terms, to be flexible, because these aren't normal times. And, I think some of the guys I know are getting all upset. Oh, well, I can't go there. They can't come here. We can still celebrate together. We have FaceTime, or I got portal TVs for my house and my two boys' houses. They're not expensive. It's a little box. You hook it up to your big screen TV. You're sitting in your family room. They're sitting in theirs. We can still celebrate together. We don't have to physically be together. And is it as good? No, but it's almost as good. The love is still there. I still see their shiny faces. I still see them being balls and running around the room. The difference is that Grandpa's not able to run around the room with them, which I normally would,
Right.
And then, I send greeting cards, send e-cards now. It's easy to do on American Greetings. For $19 a year, you can get a subscription. And I saturate those boys with greeting cards for every occasion I can think of. And particularly right now with all the cool Christmas cards that are out there, funny, serious ones, etc. I'm firing one of those off every couple of days to each of them. So I think we have to think outside the box, just like I have with the business here. We have to think outside of the box, and it has to fit for the people that work here. Well, even more so with our families. We have to be flexible, think outside of the box, figure out ways to be together and to celebrate the birth of Jesus together.
Yeah.
And I think that's the bottom line. If you can't get there, fine. Doesn't mean you can't celebrate.
Yeah.
And if they can't get here, same thing. And just work it out. And it takes a lot of communication. We're still going back and forth. My youngest son is a deer hunter. And he said, well, if I get a deer, then it'll be this date. But if I don't, it might not be that date. It'll be this date. I said, well, okay, fine. It might be after Christmas. We celebrate Christmas with you because you're still working on getting a deer. And that's okay. That's all right. I know how he's been taught. I know what he believes, and he'll celebrate. and then we'll get together. But I know he'll celebrate the birth of Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome. And I think it's wise to listen, right? And to get a sense what other people are thinking. And then any plans, decisions, right? Of course, with 2020 requires that you have flexibility built into it, but that's always the case as well. And I think the word that comes to mind for me for, when it comes to grandparenting in this season, the next couple of weeks, is just initiate. Two words come to mind: initiate and fun.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And just because you're not there does not mean you cannot be hilarious and you cannot have some fun.
Oh,
I think about
absolutely right.
With my own kids, we've done things. There's the web app called Kahoot that is absolutely a hoot, and it's an online game. We've played Zoom charades. My kids are working on a Christmas pageant with their cousins. They're going to do over Zoom at some point. So there's just lots of cool opportunities out there, and I'm a firm believer, if there's a will, there's a way. What I want every grandfather to know is you have the opportunity to be a hero, right? To absolutely worshipped as a hero is probably a strong way to put it, but it's pretty close, I think. Because when I talk to men, oftentimes what it really gets them talking on an intimate level is when I ask them, tell me about your dad or your grandfather. And then people just open up, right? There's some positive or negative, right? And you have the opportunity to have a profound influence. And so one of the other things that comes to mind as well is doing a little research. The Love Language book, The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman, is invaluable in trying to understand people. And then you might have to learn some new skills, like how do I offer a word of encouragement? I'm usually filled with, whatever, like telling it how it is. That's what my parents did with me or whatever. I don't know who that was. I was just impersonating, but anyway, right? We're all designed with these needs, and I think we all have the ability to meet those needs for other people. And so just have that kind of intentionality and eyes on going into this holiday experience.
The Love Language book is fantastic. I'd highly recommend it. I in fact, after I read it, bought copies for both my boys and sent them to them. Now the oldest called me and said, "So you think I need this?" the youngest called me and said, "Thank you. I really appreciate this." So it's the difference in personalities, but in Proverbs, it says grandchildren are the crown of the aged. I truly believe that. This is my crown, right?
Right.
And it's precious to me. And I think the biggest mistake that I see parents making and grandparents is to try to live vicariously through either their children or their grandchildren or both.
Yeah.
And so my son, who played Division I baseball, there was a father that just got irate at games, and the cords would stand out on his necks and his face would get beet red, and he'd be screaming at the umpire, and he'd be screaming at the coaches and screaming at his own child. And so I asked my son after the game, I said, "So what's wrong with that guy?" And he said, "I think he hasn't closed his yearbook yet." Mm. We need to close our yearbook, not our yearbook anymore. It's our son's yearbook or our daughter's yearbook or our grandchildren's yearbook. And our job is to fill that full of great memories, to fill it full of faith, to teach them, to be an example, so that they can be proud of their yearbook, and they can close it up when it's time for them to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And thus, there's part of Deuteronomy that talks about 10,000 generations. I would love to think that I'm starting with my son and then with my grandkids, the start of 10,000 generations of love and grace and peace and joy. and faith.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's an incredible concept, an idea, and even a calling to keep in mind for sure. So Ted, I want to say thank you for even that last little bit, but I mean, this entire thing. Thank you for all you're doing to make the world a better place. And thank you for sharing some of that wisdom with us today. So guys, that's going to wrap up this episode of Man Card Mondays. Hopefully you got something you can use. If you want to know more about any of the stuff we talked about, we'll put some links in the description below. But if nothing else, we hope you have a fantastic holiday season, and we'll talk to you later. Adios.